A 32 female had always felt a slight unease around my mother-in-law. She presented a sweet facade, but something about her felt off-kilter. When our son, Leo, was born 3 months ago, her constant presence, supposedly to help, often felt more like an intrusive surveillance. Then came that afternoon. I just stepped out of Leo's room for maybe a minute to grab a quick snack. When I returned, the lightweight muslin blanket we used in his bassinet was completely covering his face. Mother-in-law was standing nearby, looking flustered. "Oh my, it must have just ridden up," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with what seemed like forced innocence. A cold dread washed over me. Leo was thankfully unharmed, but the way the blanket was positioned so deliberately over his mouth and nose, it didn't feel like an accident. My intuition screamed danger, but without any concrete proof, I felt powerless. I played it cool, just nodded and readjusted the blanket around him. But internally, a storm was brewing. That night, while my husband was asleep, I found myself deep in the reviews for miniature hidden cameras online. 2 days later, a discreet package arrived. Let's just say I became quite adept at finding inconspicuous angles. It took 6 agonizing days. 6 days of acting as if everything was normal, enduring her cooing over Leo, while those tiny lenses meticulously recorded her every move. The waiting gnawed at me, a constant knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. Each time she held him, my pulse quickened with a terrible premonition. Then, finally I saw it. The digital timestamp confirmed it was the 3rd day after installing the cameras. There she was, leaning over Leo's bassinet, glancing around to ensure my husband wasn't present. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she pulled the breathable muslin blanket upwards, completely covering his face. For a horrifying few seconds, he was obscured. Then, she subtly rearranged it, feigning surprise. It must have ridden up, act replayed before my eyes. A wave of nausea and fury washed over me. I immediately backed up the footage onto multiple devices, secured it on a cloud server. This evidence was irrefutable. Sunday dinner at their house was just 3 days away. The stage was set. I maintained a calm demeanor around my husband, not uttering a word about what I'd discovered. He simply assumed I was experiencing the usual anxieties of a new parent. He had no idea the storm that was about to break. Sunday arrived, and the entire family was gathered. Mother-in-law was in her element, showering Leo with exaggerated affection. I remained quiet, allowing her to unknowingly walk into the trap. After the meal, during a lull in the conversation, I casually announced, "Oh, you know what? I wanted to show you all a cute video I took of Leo the other day." I connected my phone to the large smart TV in their living room. My husband looked mildly curious. Mother-in-law's cheerful expression flickered slightly. I pressed play. The room fell into an absolute silence. The only sound was the faint audio from the recording. On the screen, in stark clarity, was my mother-in-law deliberately covering my 3-month-old son's face with his blanket. Her flimsy excuse from that afternoon was exposed for the lie it was. The color drained from my husband's face. His mouth hung open in disbelief. His siblings gasped audibly. Father-in-law looked ashen, a hand clamped over his mouth. Mother-in-law's face, which had been beaming moments before, was now a mask of shock and dawning horror. Then, my husband's voice cut through the silence, cold and sharp. "Mom? What in God's name was that?" She attempted to deny it, the tears starting to flow, her voice trembling. It wasn't like that. The blanket he must have kicked it up. We just saw it, Mom," my husband stated flatly, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "We all saw exactly what you did." The room erupted into chaos. His siblings began to question her, their voices rising in disbelief and anger. Father-in-law looked utterly devastated, shaking his head in profound disappointment. My husband turned to me, his eyes filled with a dawning understanding of the silent fear I had been living with. I don't understand," he stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "I think you do," I replied calmly, though inside I was a whirlwind of relief and lingering fear. There have been other instances, small things that made me uneasy when she was alone with him. My intuition was screaming at me, and now we know why. The immediate aftermath was intense and emotionally charged. My husband was furious, heartbroken, and utterly repulsed by his mother's actions. He didn't attempt to defend her, not even for a moment. The evidence was undeniable. He confronted his mother right there, his voice shaking with rage. He declared that she would never again be left alone with our son. Ever. He stated that he needed significant time to process this betrayal and that their relationship would be irrevocably changed. We left shortly after, the silence in the car thick with unspoken emotions. It wasn't a hostile silence between us, but rather the heavy quiet of shock and the painful realization of a deep betrayal. The past few weeks have been a blur of raw emotions and difficult conversations. My husband is still grappling with the reality of his mother's actions. He's been incredibly supportive, his disbelief slowly morphing into a resolute protectiveness towards Leo. He's had several tense discussions with his family. Apparently, there have been subtle manipulative tendencies and a degree of possessiveness from his mother in the past, but nothing that ever hinted at such a dangerous act. He has established firm boundaries with her. Mother-in-law has been relentless with calls and texts, attempting to manipulate the narrative, portraying herself as the victim and accusing me of turning her son against her. For the most part, he has ignored her attempts. On the few occasions he has responded, his message has been clear. Her actions were inexcusable, and she needs to seek professional help if she ever hopes to have a relationship with our family again. Father-in-law is deeply ashamed and apologetic. He visited us a few days ago, looking utterly defeated. He reiterated his shock and sorrow and confirmed that he is strongly urging his wife to seek therapy. For me, the constant anxiety has significantly lessened now that the truth is out in the open. Knowing that I acted to protect my son provides a profound sense of relief. We have since changed the locks on our doors as a precaution. And little Leo remains blissfully unaware of the turmoil, continuing to gurgle and smile, his innocence a stark contrast to the darkness we uncovered. Several months have passed, and a semblance of normalcy has returned to our lives, albeit a new normal. My husband is still processing the enormity of his mother's betrayal, but our bond has deepened through this ordeal. This horrific experience, in a twisted way, has forced us to communicate with a level of honesty and vulnerability we hadn't reached before. His trust in my instincts is now absolute. Mother-in-law remains estranged. My husband has maintained his stance. Until she takes responsibility for her actions and seeks professional help, she will not be a part of Leo's life. She occasionally attempts to reach out, but her calls and messages go unanswered. Father-in-law provides occasional, somber updates, mostly confirming that she has not yet sought any form of therapy. It's a deeply sad situation, but our priority remains the safety and well-being of our son. We have moved forward. Leo is thriving, reaching all his developmental milestones with joyful abandon. Our home once again feels like a safe haven. There are still moments when the memory of that terrifying afternoon resurfaces, but they are increasingly overshadowed by the profound love and fierce protectiveness I feel for my son. Sharing our story felt like a necessary step in processing everything. Knowing that my fears were validated, that my instincts were correct, has been incredibly empowering. Thank you for listening, Reddit. Sometimes the quiet observations hold the most significant truths, and sometimes justice, however unsettling, unfolds in the most unexpected of settings. It wasn't easy, but we navigated it together.